Welcome everyone to this afternoon's webinar. We are talking today about 10 practical ways auto-classification can impact AI. If you are new here, I'd like to introduce Sandy Sirkes, who is Valora's co-founder and CEO. And my name is Jen Nelson. I'm the VP of Strategic Solutions here at Valora. If you are new, we do have a webinar series that we put on every year. We are here today at May 13th, and I don't have any dates for the next ones because I'm about to rejig the back half of the year. We've got a lot of interesting new things that we want to talk about and bring forth. So this is an idea of some of the stuff, and if you have been to the website and have registered for anything, I'll just kind of move you around, but give me a week, and I'll have new dates next to the ones for the back half of the year. But if you have missed any that you would like to look at on demand, you can visit our website at valoratech.com, and all of our past webinars are online for you to have a peruse through. A little bit about Valora. So we offer an auto classification platform specifically for information governance, the practice, the strategy, and use cases in that realm. We help automate the discovery, the identification, the classification, and the defensible disposition of content, regardless of where it lives in repositories across enterprise systems. And it's usually used by IG teams, but and we'll talk about this too, as IG information governance, the umbrella becomes so broad. We've got records teams, information management teams, legal, compliance, IT, all using something like this, because when you're using an auto classification platform, it will bring multiple enterprise repositories into a single view, so you have kind of a lay of the land of everything. But it also, again, kind of helps with multiple use cases of information governance, because once you know what your content is it stored correctly, who has access, how long do I keep it, where should it live, all of those things, it really lends itself well to all of those kind of pillars in information governance, everything from data privacy to legal hold, and what we're going to talk about today is AI readiness. So that's a little bit about us, a little bit about you, and thank you for when you register, you fill in my little questionnaire here. But the folks around the table today, and again, welcome, mostly records and information management folks, and a little from legal, compliance, and data privacy. And we always ask, what are your organization's main concerns, or what are your challenges that you're facing in your information governance practice where you are? And we've got a laundry list of things here: automating manual processes, file cleanup and rot, managing content and retention policies. But the winner every time is OMG, you guys, everything. So all of the above. So you're in a good place today. You're in good company. After the webinar, so as you know, I will be sending out these slides, and I will send a link to the recording of the webinar that you can find on our site. Live right here in the chat. Is it the chat or the Q&A? We're in the chat right here.
Chat.
Put your questions in the Q&A, put your questions or just things for discussion in the chat, and we'll get to them as we go. If this is your first Valora webinar, we are very conversational, and we have no problem interrupting each other and asking questions that we see come through. So please don't hesitate. If you don't want to do that, then we'll save some time for the end to have a little Q&A session there too. Okay. Let's get into it. Before we get into it and the actual agenda of our 10 practical ways auto classification can impact AI, I thought I would just take a minute just to kind of lay the land. What are we even talking about? So when we're talking about AI, AI is not new. It has been around since the 50s, but there are kind of these big buckets of artificial intelligence. The first being machine learning, and those are algorithms that kind of learn as they go, make predictions on a data set. The second is extractive AI, and that is kind of based on natural language processing that extracts data from existing text. And you ask, is an auto classification AI? And it is. It's this kind of AI. It's this kind of AI because these two types of AI are very transparent, therefore defensible. I know exactly why I made that decision. It's based on this exact content or exact phrase as an example. And the other two types of AI are generative AI, and that is creating brand new content based on the data that it's fed or it's training on. And then the fourth is agentic AI, and that's the newest kind of AI, and that's agents operating independently, making its own decisions, performing tasks without human intervention or instruction. So these are kind of the four buckets we're talking about. And again, auto-classification is a type of AI using these two, the machine learning and extractive. And in the context we're talking about today, auto-classification and that type of AI is lending itself and informing the generative and agentic AIs. So when organizations are like, we're behind in AI, we need AI, deploy AI, that's kind of what we're talking about, is the deploying AI and how auto-classification can help in that arena. So as I was putting this together, I was like, I felt like David Letterman, because I was like, with his top 10. And can you believe he went off the air in 2015? I could have sworn it was like 2 or 3 years ago. Apparently it was not. Anyhow, this is like David Letterman's top 10. 10 practical ways auto-classification impacts AI. And again, it's what we're looking at it through the lens of auto-classification and AI readiness, getting ready for those challenges that we have all seen when other organizations or our own organizations are deploying AI. And everyone's kind of in the same boat, whether you're attending webinars or whether you're attending like kind of face-to-face conferences, everybody's talking about the same thing. It's absolutely AI, 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 but however, it's now information governance time to shine. Like IG is no longer a back office function. It's like, hey, I bet you we need to know what we're doing and what we're feeding AI engines in order for it to output stuff that's actually usable. So information governance as a practice is really having its kind of time in the sun. And in this era of AI, it really is this time to come to the table, to sit around the table when folks are talking about AI and AI readiness and deployment and models and data that they're using for training sets. So yeah, that's where we're going today. We're going to break down number 1, 10 practical ways auto-classification impacts AI. Number 1. I feel like I need cards in my hand like David Letterman had. Actually, he started at 10. Now that I say that, we're starting at 1. In no particular order. Prevents AI from accessing sensitive data. Way we can help auto-classification help number 1. Why does it matter and why do we care? This is a biggie. AI cannot distinguish sensitive content from non-sensitive content unless the organization can. It can look for social insurance numbers, look for dates of birth, look for addresses. Yeah, that's the easy stuff. But unless the organization can define what it considers sensitive content, no AI that you throw at it is going to tell you any different. So how auto-classification first can help in that area is it will, of course, help identify kind of the standards, the PII, the PHI, but it's also going to look for maybe trade secrets or IP or keywords or other kind of confidential content that may not fall into that classification of personal data or PII, but is something that A, you don't want to get out, could harm you if it's out, and 3, you don't really want to feed that to your engine and to be brought up in conversation. Oh, I didn't realize that, we're, the company's for sale and, everyone's losing their jobs, things like that is corporate sensitive content. So how auto-classification helps is certainly to identify that and also puts those policy-based guardrails in play so that you don't have to worry about that. It will prevent that accidental leak from even happening. And real examples of that when you're deploying and putting your data in for an LLM to train on, you can tell it, don't put your outputs or base your outputs on anything that has, attorney-client privilege or anything that's labeled confidential HR or anything that contains any bit of patient data, like whatever those things are. When the AI engine comes around, it's just going to skip over. It's not even going to look at it. And so that that your data is safe, but more importantly, the AI becomes usable without exposing that risk. So you can still very confidently, safely, release the hounds on the data, and your employees can use it again without having that risk.
Jen, can I jump in here? One of the things that we sort of, as a society, the maturation level that we've sort of gotten to with AI, which is admittedly not very far, but typically AI is being driven by an IT group or maybe a data science group. And these are folks that have not historically focused on the nitty-gritty content of files. And we've talked about this before in this webinar series, that IT tends to guard the gate. That's the access in and out of the organization. At best, they're looking at your organizational data estate at the kind of folder level at best. They're really not looking inside any particular file or sub-information within a file to determine just how sensitive, or of this document, it's only this one sentence that's sensitive, the rest of it's fine. They don't go to that level of granularity. And so since they're the ones generally deploying or being responsible for AI, they tend not to think that way. So we're sort of inheriting that mindset from IT. And what that means is that we're a little bit naive about how we're just kind of letting the AI run loose. It's sort of like sending a child with $10 into a candy store and saying, go knock yourself out. Well, what that kid is going to do is go like this down the shelves, and just grab everything. It's grabbed $10,000, this kid, worth of candy, and you gave him $10. Like, that is a little bit what is happening with AI right now, because the mindset isn't really there amongst IT and data science folks to say, should we be putting guardrails around this, or should we just unleash it? There's this sense that the AI will be smart enough or will self-correct. That is very naive and wrong. Quite the opposite actually happens, because if the AI is given an objective, then it's going to, especially without any guardrails, it is going to pursue that objective to the detriment of everything else. And so we're going to you're going to hear this theme over and over and over again: guardrails, appropriateness, kind of limitations. These are the things that right now are generally missing from AI in general, including, what's the one, Morpheus, the one that they had to retract back because it was too smart and exposing security risks all over the place. That's just an example of kind of, you hear like AI run amok, whatever. Really, it's that we as the guardians of this are not providing. We're like bad parents. We're letting the kid run amok instead of giving it proper guidelines. Back Amen. To you.
10 practical ways AutoClassification help with AI. Number 2, improves retrieval accuracy for retrieval augmented generation and enterprise search. So why do we care about that? Because RAG is only effective if the right or the correct content is retrieved. And Sandy, I'll pass that to you to talk about RAG.
Just in case some of you have never heard of RAG, as Jen said, that stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. And basically what that is, it's a technique to kind of prime AI a little bit so that it's not quite so foolish in what it's doing or in its answers. So the idea behind RAG is that you would give your AI algorithms like some direction. This is really just about retrieval. This isn't about appropriateness yet, but it's just to say, why don't you use our employee handbook to answer questions about our HR policies instead of just, looking all over the place or making something up. So that's what RAG is. It's the best metaphor I've ever heard is, think of it like an open book exam. The issue, and it's helpful to understand kind of what is the technology underneath here. It's a relatively simple technology that is just scoring relevance. So this is by and large how AI works. It's sort of looking at a prompt or looking at text and saying what is the most common or most likely next word or next phrase in the sequence. So that is what it would consider to be kind of the most relevant. You remember when we had search results come back in Google and they were sorted by relevance? This is essentially the same thing. But that's not necessarily the best answer or the most appropriate answer. It's just the most statistically matching answer. And that subtlety is really important because that is the gray area between sort of mathematically correct versus sort of appropriate, kind of risk-oriented correctness. Is that good, Jen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how AutoClassification can help with this is just through the act of AutoClassification, going in, reading, classifying, applying metadata, both organic and synthetic metadata, determining what is this thing? What is it about? Who should have access? What is business processes and jurisdictions? It can help and apply to that. So in doing so, will help with that search precision, the context relevance. So when I'm asking about something, it's going to pull exactly back as an example, rather than, pull every contract when I'm doing contract retrieval or asking it about contracts. It's only going to pull active vendor contracts and only in North America and only executed in the last 24 months, rather than coming back with, 100,000 contracts for me as a human to sift through. And providing that correct information, again, will give you more accurate AI answers with less hallucinations. So it's grounded in reality. It's bringing back those citations of kind of where it's coming from within your organization. And again, because what we want to do is segue into avoiding hallucinations. Number 3.
And before we get there, there was one thing I left out of RAG, this is really important for people to know, which is the G in RAG is that generative thing again. In other words, it is actually creating answers. It's not just spitting, but it's not like an FAQ and it's reading the answer. It is creating an answer, generating it. And the reason that matters is because one of the kind of dings on RAG is that, let's say your prompt is something like, I need you to write a contract, a vendor contract for blah, blah, blah. So what happens is that you get a piece from this one and a piece from that one because it's generating it. So the thing that gets produced is a little bit of a Frankenstein of pieces of things that came before, whatever was most statistically relevant. So you can kind of get this kind of sort of bastardized hodgepodge. And so what AutoClassification does is kind of narrow the scope for RAG and say, only use this best case version of this or this most recent version of that. And when you're generating, make sure your generation falls within XYZ parameters. So you can think of the AutoClassification because it is affecting the primer info that the RAG sees to generate its answer. It's sort of like, it's making good data input so that the RAG produces, it generates quality output.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Sandy. Number 3, AutoClassification can help reduce AI hallucinations. And why this matters is that when LLMs are trained on and low quality or incorrect or obsolete or irrelevant content, that's where hallucinations happen. So first of all, what is a hallucination? Side note, anytime I get to use a unicorn in a slide deck makes me extremely happy. But what is an AI hallucination? It's where the LLM, think of your chat GPTs or whatever, generate content that sounds super confident and super realistic and totally makes sense, but is not based in fact and is 100% incorrect. And I heard somebody at a conference refer to hallucinations as a confident toddler who walks in the door and tells you exactly what it is with 100% confidence and 0% correctness. The thing is, it's not a bug, but it is a result of that AI. Again, it's predicting what the next word is going to be in that sentence. Predicting those plausible patterns instead of actually verifying the actual facts. And why it's so super tricky is because it sounds like it knows what it's talking about. If you have ever asked it something, it's so confident. It's like, great question, Jen. I'm glad you answered that, and it sounds so convincing in the way with such authority that it gives. It becomes tricky for humans to make those make those decisions. So it really is very extremely important that you read through what that output is. So you've got that human in the loop, because again, it's convincing misinformation. It looks perfectly credible. And you have seen it in the news, fake citations and fabricated legal cases in court, and agentic AI agents pulling, like fictitious policies about, I think the last one I was thinking of was the Air Canada one, where the bereavement policy in the agentic AI was like, yeah, sure, just give the death certificate, book your flight, send us the death certificate later, and we'll reimburse you for your flight. A policy which did not exist, but the LLM made it up. The thing to watch for is that and that's an agentic AI version that was customer facing, but you are liable for mistakes that it makes. Anyhow, back to hallucinations. The root cause really, and I don't know, I was talking about this with Sandy the other day. It was like, as a user, I think we're all users now of some kind of LLM system. We know how it works. We know it's predicting the next word based on yada yada, but doesn't it still seem very magical? Like you just, and I'm like amazed by it every time it comes back to something. You're like, damn, you're smart. However, the root cause of hallucinations, again, is it wants to give you the right answer. It wants to give you an answer, and its job is to give you an answer, not base it in reality. And when the information that it's trained on, if you're asking it a question it literally has never heard of, or it has no fact or root information to go back to it, it's still going to give you an answer, but it's missing that contextual context. It's missing the content that you're asking it for, so it will literally make it up. So enter auto-classification then. How can applying auto-classification beforehand help with that? Because it can pull out that authoritative content. It'll say, these are the 20 drafts, or these are the old policies. Use this one. This is the final version. This is the newest policy. Use this. And it will put forward what the LLM should be training on, and so that you can be confident that it's actually training on the right stuff. And an important thing, and an example, of course, here is, look for and deliver things from the final policy instead of any drafts or anything on shared drive. So it's not delivering and serving up misinformation. And of course, go ahead.
Can I add something here, Jen? Which is, and we're going to get to this later, when AI is feeding itself over and over and over again. That's like our 10th or 11th slide. But in the meantime, one of the things that auto-classification can assist with is, what is the source of this information? Did this come from a person? Did it come from an authority? Or did it come from AI itself? Or did it come from another agent, an AI agent, agentic AI, from another organization? So that you can start to have this notion of kind of rating the authority or the trust level of the content itself based on its source, based on its lineage, based on kind of the veracity throughout. Is the document consistent with itself? That kind of thing. So there's a lot of ways that auto-classification is becoming much more sophisticated than what's the title, what's the doc type. Sure, all of those. But getting into this area of priming the AI and understanding who is going to be the consumer of the classification data. Used to be, it was us, the people, but increasingly it is the AI itself that's going to be the consumer. So what is being assessed and captured and maintained and fed is starting to shift to focus towards an AI consumer of the auto classification, which, yes, technically reduces hallucinations. That's a fun byproduct of that.
And number 4,
perfect.
AutoClassification enables policy-based AI governance at scale. And I will also say information governance at scale. And why this matters is that for those folks who are still, organizations are still relying on humans to do their information governance. In AI governance, manual governance will not scale across millions of files. It just literally won't. So how auto classification can help is, of course, again, operationalizes that governance in an automated way. So not only like, what is this thing? What do I do with it? But should we even have it? Where do I keep it? It's enabling privacy enforcement by access or access restriction. Where do I keep it? Who has access? When do I get rid of it? While also accounting for things like record hold holders or legal holds or other audit holds. And trying to do that in a manual way just on the daily when you're talking with millions of files is impossible. When you're going to ask a human or a team of humans, just show us what documents we should feed the LLM. Are you insane? Like it's not going to happen. So using auto classification will do that for you, again, for all of the reasons that we said. It's the right data, it's giving it the right information, it's saying, putting those guardrails in place, send it this, not this. And then you can automate that at the start. So what we mean by that is kind of that by allowing that AI governance at source. So documents is an example. Documents classified as containing EU personal data automatically become restricted from any non-EU AI processing. It's not even a thing that I have to turn off or on. It will just know. So that's extremely helpful to enable. It becomes enforceable instead of aspirational, because if you'd rely on humans and rely on humans to tell you on best guess what is and what isn't, we see it fails every time. So
I'd like to jump in here to specifically address the question that was asked about retention and disposition of the generative AI content. So there's the prompt and there's the response, which before the interaction did not exist, right? So, and the question is, what do we do with these? And you e-discovery folks who are out there, you can correct me, and Anne, I know you're on the call, so jump in anytime. But the prompts themselves, the responses that come back, all of that is discoverable. It is, I would imagine, very similar to a Teams or Slack chat or even an email conversation. It's just between a human and a machine, or potentially when it's agentic, machine to machine. But all of that information needs to be treated as enterprise record. It's probably ephemeral. So whatever similar policies you might have on like a Teams chat in terms of how long you keep that, whether or not you are using that under legal hold, I would imagine all of those same things apply to the prompts and the responses themselves. The interesting thing to us over here at Valora is that those can then become things to be classified themselves, so that a prompt becomes a data module and the generated response becomes a data module that can then be used later, for better or for worse. Since that's going to become part of the enterprise data estate, it can conceivably be considered enterprise record or something under legal hold, then it is something that has to be properly retention managed. So therefore, it certainly would be kosher in Valora's world and would require, you're getting into a little bit of a recursiveness here, but would require tagging, classification, management of those items themselves. We have the similar phenomenon when we've talked in the past about documents, and I'm not going to derail us too much to talk about structured data, but briefly, a document is a document that didn't exist in the data estate until something caused it to exist, not a human. Agentic AI works very, very similarly to our concept of documents, and the resulting output is itself potentially a record and something that needs to be life cycle managed or retention managed, just like legit, real, original, human generated content.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Anne, for chiming in there. Exactly what I kind of thought the answer was, but she's an attorney. And I know, she's not giving you legal advice and she's not
No,
your
she's not
attorney.
giving
I
me
know,
legal
Anne.
advice. Yeah.
On TV only. Excellent.
Reason auto-classification can help reduce bias in AI training data. And why this matters is poorly governed data introduces bias into AI models. And so what do we mean by bias? Really, the more uncurated or the messier your data is, the more bias it's going to have. And what it refers to are these kind of unfair outcomes produced by AI that often does reinforce existing human prejudices or societal inequalities, just like what we think of bias to be. And again, it occurs when it's trained on outdated data, maybe not necessarily wrong, but historical biases or societal biases. And what causes the bias in AI is unrepresentative data. So you're only trending on a certain set of data that does not represent the target population. So it's only like a smidgen of it, or based on historical or societal biases, learning from historical data that contained human prejudice. And we'll use hiring practices as an example. We'll get into that in a second, and then a measurement bias. So when data is collected, to measure whatever you're looking at, it's either distorted or non-neutral because of where it's coming from or what it's talking about, based on, again, the data that it's fed. And some examples that we see being, in our organizations or certainly in the news about biases in AI are, the first one is hiring algorithms. So it's not wrong that many technical roles were, by, white men, 40 years ago, 30, 40 years ago. It's not wrong because that's what happened. But when the AI learns on that, it can skew hiring systems and AI to prefer male candidates over female candidates. In healthcare algorithms. An example of that was an algorithm used to manage patient care for major health systems was prematurely recommending ending coverage for old people, elderly patients, based on, again, flawed metrics or whatever the data it was going on. And then image generation. So this has less to do with LLMs, but still with generative AI, reproducing or producing photos that carry through those stereotypes. So associating nurse with women or entrepreneur with white men. So you'll see that come through. And again, it's not wrong, but it's amplified because it's using historical data. And I'll give an example of the pantyhose policy. If you are a law firm and you're in your organization's LLM, and there has been no training and no thought, and you've just released to the hounds on your data. For an organization that was, alive in the 50s and 60s, there was only 5% women. And the dress code and policy, you had to wear a blazer, you had to wear a pencil skirt, you had to wear pantyhose, and you had to wear closed-toed shoes. That was written in the policies. So if you are in the year of our Lord 2026, and, the AI has unleashed on the data, you've digitized everything back from the 50s and the 60s, you've got 40 years of a pantyhose policy and 20 years of no pantyhose policy. So the AI engine doesn't know any better. Oh, this must be important because there's 40 years of this versus 20 years of this. It doesn't think about that. So that's an example of a bias kind of entering into that unknowingly to the organization. Of course, we've changed our policy 25 years ago. You don't have to wear pantyhose, but the AI doesn't know that because it's not equating that. It's just saying we can see more of this, therefore we're weighting it inappropriately. However, the consequences of such is perpetuating discrimination, of course, the reputational and the legal risks that come with that. your policies may not, of course, they don't have anything biased or gender related in there, but you are responsible for your AI, and you are responsible for your AI outputs and the decisions that it's making. And going unchecked, it can amplify, and it can create more problems kind of in that bias atmosphere. So how auto classification can help there is, identifying the redundant data. Do not worry about the last 40 years of pantyhose policies. Only look at, this year's, dress code and HR policies. It can identify the skewed data sets of, we've got, 40 years of this. What's the most appropriate? Pulling out that sensitive demographic information, maybe anonymizing that information. Sure, you want to ask your AI about maybe certain trends in business or forecasting trends, but take out the sensitive, personally identifiable information about those folks, so that it's not making those assumptions. And then, of course, identifying the inappropriate training content. So not just like, hey, don't include this, but like, oh my God, do not include this, because there's terms that we used to use that are now very inappropriate. So we do not want the AI and the LLMs learning those outdated and caveman terms in those contexts. And what you get when you've got that, again, that clean data that is appropriate to send to those LLMs, you've got those training sets that everyone is confident in. You are confident that you are not using any terms or any kind of biases there, and it will help to reduce your exposure on any of those kind of discriminatory outcomes that your AI engine may produce.
I'll also add one wrinkle there, which is what is discriminatory in one jurisdiction may not be in another.
Yes.
So having that context of where did this document originate, in what business context is it used? Is it even applicable in this jurisdiction versus that jurisdiction? Again, these are the types of tags that can and should be forwarded to AI, so that it is making appropriate, again, not just relevant, but appropriate use of the data. Don't use something that's applicable in Saudi Arabia to assess, discrimination in the United States. It's going to be pretty different.
Yeah. 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 And what you get, again, as a result at the end of the day, are clean data sets. And you're going to confidently reduce that algorithmic bias, and what's in there. You're confident. Reason number 6, auto classification makes AI outputs more defensible. And why this matters is, in early days of Gen AI, it was just kind of creating things and we just took its word for it. Organizations now need the AI to explain why the AI produced an answer, what data it used, and cite that source, and whether it complied with their internal AI policies. So that is now the level of governance that organizations are requiring. And how that helps, again, is, what everything is, what it includes, any keywords, is it sensitive? Is it appropriate to feed? Not only that, but also the data provenance and traceability. This generative AI answer referenced this document in this part. So it will provide that back, and you're confident that the documents that you're feeding it are the right ones. And it also helps to provide, because we're gathering, auto classification gathers all that contextual metadata, it can also use that to help feed that as well. And the outcomes there are, of course, it enables the explainability, not only for the Gen AI engine, but also for the teams that are building or, augmenting those algorithms. And of course, the auditability. We know it produced this. It said this because it was referencing this document at this time. And it also connects those AI outputs now to the authoritative sources that you have provided it to say, reference these documents. When someone asks about a policy, reference the 2026 policy as an example.
Jen, I'll add 2 points in here. One is there's kind of a growing acceptance of who is responsible, who is liable for what AI produces? And it's not particularly the AI algorithm maker. It is the organization, the business owner, the people that are using the AI to accomplish business tasks. The same way, if your subordinate does something stupid and you have directed them to do this, then you are liable for the actions of that subordinate, especially if you're in a senior role in your organization. The same is true of the AI. And I don't think a lot of organizations have kind of absorbed that liability flows upward sort of aspect. Ultimately, it is going to be the organization. Who's responsible for risk in that organization? Of course, it's the little team. Who's responsible for the output of what AI is doing? Who's responsible when two AI agents are talking to each other? I guarantee you, at the end of the day, the person on trial, the thing in the seat is a human. It's not a robot in the seat. It's someone in your organization. And so because of that, this whole notion about defensibility is getting increasing weight, because people are going to be called upon to explain why the AI did this. Why did you employ the AI? And to go up there and say, well, I didn't know it would do that, is not going to be an acceptable answer. That, well, you should have known, or should have anticipated, or could have reasonably tested. All of these are going to be, very reasonable positions that the other party is going to take. So one of the core tenets of defensibility is having outcomes that are repeatable. And generative AI today generally is not repeatable. If you ask the same prompt on Monday and on Wednesday, you may get different answers. You may not get exactly the same answer, and you don't have exactly the same reasoning. Now let more time go by where there's been different training, it's fed itself more information, maybe it's a later version of the algorithm, and it's absolutely not repeatable from time to time to time. Again, this is where auto-classification plays a role, because it is limiting the scope of how the AI performs. It's saying to the AI, you must use this, you may not use this, and here's why. This is a better answer than that, use this. That helps make the outcome more repeatable, more adhering to a rule structure. Remember when Jen showed in the beginning the top two are defensible? It pulls the generative kind of universe a little bit more into the defensible rules-based universe by restricting its utilization. So that is one of the ways that auto-classification helps promote defensibility.
Yeah. Amen. All right, so number 7, auto-classification can help reduce AI costs by eliminating rot. How so? And why does it matter? Because AI processing massive amounts of redundant data is actually quite expensive and taxing. And Sandy, I'll let you take this about why is AI processing rot so expensive, and the way that kind of the
Okay.
currency of AI.
Yes. So if you're not familiar with tokens or tokenization, basically that is the currency, that is the way that AI gets charged. It's a little bit like data storage, right? Where you're sort of how much storage are you using, and you get charged per gigabyte per month or something like that. AI is charged by the token. And a token generally equates to about 4 characters. So if you have a Microsoft Word file and it's, 6,000 characters, each one of those 4 characters is a token. And there's a charge whether the token is being sent up as in a prompt to the engine or is being spit back as a response. So the kind of wordier your documents, the more they cost in AI. And somebody recently asked me, is that why, generative AI is so wordy when it comes back? Yes and no. I mean, yes, it's self-serving to the providers to do that. There is another reason, which is that when AI is unsure, it goes wider and broader and hopes that in its wordier, more far-ranging answer, it's covered your question. But yes, there is an element of gamification around tokens. And the reason that you guys need to know this is because there are natural limits to how many tokens can be processed in a chunk, which is why if you try and upload, a 3,000 page operating manual in with your prompt, it totally chokes. It can't handle that much data at a time. And you can see in this little chart, this is as of about a month ago, what is kind of the natural limit, the maximum size token that these engines can handle at a time. So why do you care about that? Because the more junk you have in your data estate, the more expensive it is to process. So if you have the same data, and all organizations have this, right? You had some sort of M&A, you inherited a company, and their original data is over here, and then you also uploaded it to SharePoint over there. Now you have two copies of the same data. You're paying twice as much for the AI to become aware and facile with this data. You're paying all this extra tokens. So this is yet another reason why you want to clear up rot. We used to talk in terms of human impact, right? It's a pain to search. How do you know which one is the right one? Why do I have data all over the place? Then we talked in terms of storage. Now we're talking in terms of AI currency, which is tokens. So the more junk you have lying around, the more expensive it is to process. But wait, it gets worse. The more junk you have around, the messier the signal is to the AI. The AI is going to reflect the signal it's given. So if you have a lot of rot lying around, its results are going to reflect a lot of rot. So let's say you're the kind of organization that always has 72 versions of every contract you've ever signed. Can't imagine any organizations like that. So only one of the 72 versions of that contract is the relevant, is the right one. The other 71 are polluting the data environment. You are paying 72 times to get the best one out of there, and it is being kind of polluted by the other 71. So the worse your data estate, the messier and more uncurated your data estate, yes, the more it costs, but the worse results you're going to get. So did everybody get that compounding effect here? If you're looking to build an ROI, and when are you not, to just get rid of the rot, you will lower your AI processing costs and simultaneously increase the results back. I wish I had a mic. Mic drop.
Yeah, mic drop. Yeah. Good call. And of course, how does auto-classification help? Because auto-classification will identify everything that is redundant, everything that is past retention and obsolete, and everything that is trivial. And what you can do, you could delete unnecessary content from your data stores, but at least at a minimum, you don't feed it to your AI, and if people are hesitant, and I cannot believe, again, in the year 2026, and we're like, well, I think we should hold on to that. You don't need to hold on to it, but if you do, then keep it. But again, don't keep feeding the garbage to the AI. And of course, the result here is certainly lower and appropriate AI infrastructure cost and faster, correct retrieval of data.
Jen, before we go on, there were some really good questions asked, and I tried to keep up with the chat, but I can't. So I'm just going to answer live.
Yeah.
So we have some questions on, is it repeatable with the same data? I'm assuming that is the question about, is generative AI repeatable with the same data? And the answer is not really. It might appear similar, but it is not a guarantee that it is repeatable with the same data. As a fun experiment, ask the AI something that is not truthful. Jen, I'm going to steal your example. Unless you're a published author, and maybe some of you are, but unless you're a published author, enter a prompt to an AI saying something like, could you please list out for me the 10, my 10 best bestseller novels that I wrote, and it will come up with something, okay? So ask it that on a Monday, then ask it that a week later. It is not going to produce the same set of books. They'll be similar or whatever, but it is surely not going to be the identical list. And that's a really good way to demonstrate this non-consistent, non-repeatable behavior. So that's, even though you have the same starting data, even though your prompt may be identical, it's very, very easy to get it to not be consistent. It is not consistent by default. So it's trivial to make that happen. What auto-classification does is attempt to narrow the scope and make that less wide-ranging, hopefully more the same answer, but it doesn't solve, in fairness, it doesn't solve the intrinsic flaw in a generative system, which is it is generating it from scratch. So you will still have that variability. And the question becomes, what variability tolerance is permissible? If I say, if it, in response A, it says the foregoing is blah, blah, blah. And in response B, it says the prior clause, is that acceptable? Yeah, probably. It basically means the same, it's not identical. So that's what auto-classification is trying to do, is to kind of pull it in so that the Venn diagram overlap is pretty close instead of way off. So hopefully that answers those questions. And then there was another question about, does the solution require data in your, meaning Valora's, repository? No. One of the nice things about our solution is that it can operate on data wherever it is, wherever it lives. We sometimes kind of describe our solution as a car wash, where the file kind of drives through it. Everything's all messy. It drives through and it comes out and it's clean and beautiful, and it goes back on its way. And the front headlight's been fixed. And so it doesn't require data inside our repository, but it does the auto classification, the way we are describing it, does presume our solution at play, but the data is not being hosted within Valora's solution. It's living where it's active where it is living. So hopefully that addresses that question. Ready to move on, Jen.
All right, we got 7 minutes left, just enough time for our last few here. So number 8, auto classification enables context-aware AI experience. And why does that matter? Because AI becomes more useful when it understands your business and your business context, and how that will help auto classification, again, going through the car wash, enriches content with business meaning. So, it is yes, it's a Word doc or a PDF, but what project is about? Is it about a customer? Is this customer active? Are they inactive? Is it about a product? Is it about a region, a jurisdiction, an office, a process? You can put all of this contextual business information around that document. And by doing so, then it adds that business meaning to your enterprise content, obviously. So it will improve the personalization. It will improve answers. It will understand business workflows and processes. And so when you ask about, something, pull all, I'm looking for trending, I'm looking for this, pull all my customer data. Well, active or inactive, or East Coast or West Coast or whatever. So you can start to build that contextual information around your data, and resulting in smarter, more accurate recommendations and outputs, and more personalized AI responses to your business specifically. So very helpful there. Reason number 9, auto classification accelerates AI readiness and deployment. I'm hoping that we have demonstrated that so far, but why that matters is because, and you'll hear it from folks who have either started their AI initiatives or have stopped their AI initiatives, because the organizations don't actually trust the data that it's learning on. Again, auto classification can help by inventorying that content, choosing and describing what is appropriate not appropriate, hiding the things that, need to be hidden, PII, other things, sensitive data, corporate, that's appropriate for AI learning. And the outcomes is it supports that remediation before AI is even rolled out. And you've got that, the powers that be, the AI teams, the IT teams, the C-level suite, have that confidence in the data that it's training on. And what that means internally is that it helps secure that AI adoption. You've got people using it. You're proving your ROI out from your AI initiatives. So it's faster rollout with fewer security concerns for the DLP and the SecOps folks, and objections from the rest of the folks saying, I'm not using this. I don't trust it. So very helpful there. Reason number 10, auto-classification builds trust in enterprise AI as a whole, because that, again, kind of coming back to the confidence factor in what it's looking for, it depends on trust. And your users, your employees who you want to use this AI as you deploy these initiatives, they want to know that their sensitive content is protected. And we've got examples of folks kind of pulling back on their AI and their enterprise search because, well, confident that all HR data is secure and it's not being used. Well, it's not going to serve up Sandy's, employment contract to me. But if I ask it, how much more is Sandy making than I am? It'll tell me. So employees want to know that their sensitive content is protected, that the governance is enforced, that the results are coming from vetted and trusted sources, and of course that other compliance obligations are being respected for their data and the data that they're now actively searching on and asking the AI to pull the information from. So they're more likely to use it if, as an example, HR records are executed, legal data is protected, and then, of course, as the responses are citing approved sources. So that's important, again, for that trust factor. And when you have that, and all of those are working together, your ROI and adoption rates are quite higher. And, of course, your business outcomes are better. And with 2 minutes left, we have a bonus number 11, because of course we do. And this, we actually have a webinar coming up that will talk about this entire thing on its own. But, when it hits the fan and when things go horribly wrong and you have to pull back after either a rough start, wrong data, or a model collapse, auto-classification and that metadata that we've taken will help AI recovery and rebuild that readiness. And again, why that matters is it's a fast way back. And we've got 2 minutes. Sandy, do you want to talk about model collapse?
Yeah, in 2 minutes. But
2 minutes or less.
Right. I just gave an hour-long talk on this topic.
Yeah. And we will have this. It is coming up in my dates that I'm figuring out.
Yeah. So basically, the TLDR here is that when AI is feeding itself, which is often the case because it's cheaper for AI to feed itself than to rely on us expensive humans, it becomes increasingly kind of narrow and incorrect. And what that does is it creates this concept called model collapse. And what that really means is that the data is no longer valid or trustworthy, and people just stop using it or stop trusting that. And we already have that. If you're familiar with the term AI slop, when we get news generated from some source we've never heard of and it sounds like garbage because it is, that is a very early example of model collapse. This is a whole area of study, but basically AI models are going to start failing because of this. And what auto-classification does is help with the rebuilding that will inevitably come with our second generation of AI usage by allowing all of our kind of stored information to live in the metadata tags instead of inside the humans who are, I'm sorry, expendable. We come and go. And the AI itself is going to keep evolving. So having the data stored in tags helps helps kind of with those transitions from the before times to the after times.
Absolutely. And of course, when AI systems fail, that governed data becomes the recovery foundation so that you can deploy a V2 rather quickly because that underlying metadata layer is reusable like that. So we are up at 2:00, and I thank everyone, all the hangers on that stayed till the very end. So we appreciate your time and your attention and attending this afternoon. And our key takeaways are everything that we've just talked about today is, and if one thing is, AI is only as good as the data that it is learning on and accessing. So we hope that that you can see that auto-classification can certainly help in enabling that. And if you have any questions after the fact, please do not hesitate to reach out to either Sandy or I. And again, we will send this deck out and a copy of the video as well if you want to go back and look at anything. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.